Voicemail came at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was already awake, sitting on the edge of my bed in my scrubs, lacing up my work boots before a double shift at the firm. My phone lit up on the nightstand. I didn't recognize the number at first. It was my stepfather's office line, not his cell. That detail alone should have told me something. I almost let it go to voicemail. I almost did. I pressed play. Mara. My mother's voice. Flat, practiced. The way she sounded when she'd rehearsed what she was about to say 3 times in front of a mirror. Your father and I have talked it over with the kids. We've decided it's best if you step back from the family going forward. You've always been difficult. We need peace. Don't call the house. 11 seconds. That's how long it took my mother to end 29 years. I sat there with the phone in my hand. Outside, a garbage truck was backing up, beeping in that slow, patient rhythm. Somewhere down the hall, my neighbor's dog was barking. The world was just going, just moving right along like nothing had happened. My stepbrother Cody had been pushing for this for months. I knew that. Ever since Grandma Eloise passed last spring and left behind a house in Clearwater, a brokerage account, and a storage unit full of things nobody wanted, until suddenly everybody did. Cody had always treated me the way people treat a receipt they didn't ask for. Technically, I existed. Nobody was happy about it. I set the phone face down on the mattress. In contract law, I'm a paralegal. I've been one for 6 years. There is something called a unilateral repudiation. One party decides the agreement is over and communicates that clearly. The other party then has a choice. They can fight it, or they can accept it and move accordingly. My mother had just handed me a unilateral repudiation, so I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was the Hulu account. Small, symbolic. My stepfather Gerald had put me as the billing contact when I was 22 because he said he didn't understand how streaming worked and didn't want to deal with it. $62 a month. I logged in, removed my card, and added a prepaid Visa with a $17 balance. It wouldn't cover next month's renewal. They'd find out the way everyone finds out about these things. Mid-episode, black screen. There was a problem with your payment. Then came the phone plan. This one took a little longer. I'd been the account holder for the family plan since 2019. My mother, Gerald, Cody, and his girlfriend Becca. 4 lines. $212 a month, paid from my checking account on the 15th. I logged into the carrier portal. I didn't cancel their lines. Canceling would send a notification. Instead, I removed my debit card from autopay and switched the billing to paper statements only. The statements would go to my address because I was the account holder. They would never arrive at Gerald's house. In 45 days, the plan would suspend for non-payment, and all 4 of them would stand in a Verizon store trying to explain to a 19-year-old sales associate why their phones suddenly stopped working. I called it a slow tide. You don't notice it coming until you're already underwater. The car insurance was next. I've been co-signer on Cody's policy since he got his second DUI and couldn't get coverage on his own. The premium came out of my account quarterly. I logged in, navigated to payment settings, and deleted my bank information. Left the field blank, saved the changes. The next quarterly invoice would go unpaid. Cody drove a 2021 Silverado he couldn't actually afford. That truck would be uninsured in 90 days. I wasn't canceling anything. I was simply stepping back the way my mother had asked. I closed the laptop, picked up my keys, and drove to work. The paralegal team at Harmon & Reed occupies the 3rd floor of a glass building downtown that always smells like recycled air and someone's forgotten lunch. I sat down at my desk, pulled up 3 pending contract reviews, and got to work. My hands were completely steady. In this job, you learn early that emotion is a liability. When you're reading a 40-page commercial lease looking for an indemnification trap, you can't afford to feel anything. You just read. That steadiness had cost me something over the years. My college roommate once told me I processed things like a spreadsheet. She didn't mean it as a compliment. By noon, I had 11 missed calls. Cody. Gerald's cell. My mother twice. A number I didn't recognize that turned out to Becca. I ate my lunch at my desk and didn't call anyone back. It was my coworker Priya who noticed. She stopped at my cubicle around 2, set a coffee on my desk without being asked, and said nothing. That's the thing about Priya. She's been doing this job for 15 years, and she knows what the face of someone processing something quietly looks like. She just left the coffee and walked away. I drank it. At 4 o'clock, Gerald called again. This time I answered. "You need to fix whatever you did to the accounts," he said. No hello. No acknowledgement of the morning's voicemail. Just that. "The streaming isn't working and your mother is upset." "I haven't done anything to any accounts," I said. Which was technically true. I had simply stopped doing things. "Don't play games, Mara." "Gerald." I kept my voice even. "This morning my mother called to let me know I should step back from the family. I'm stepping back." Silence. "That's not what she meant." She was pretty clear. He hung up. 2 hours later, my mother called and left a voicemail that lasted 4 minutes and 13 seconds. I know because I timed it. The general shape of it was, I was being dramatic. I was punishing them. I had always been this way. They had sacrificed so much for me I needed to grow up. I saved the voicemail. I saved all of them. Here's what they never knew. Here's the ledger they never kept. When I was 17, my mother married Gerald. He came with Cody, who was 15, and an attitude problem that everyone called high energy. They moved into our house, the house that had been my grandmother Eloise's before she signed it over to my mother. 3 bedrooms. The only one I'd ever known. Within a year, I was sleeping in the basement. Not asked, not discussed, just moved. Cody needs a real room, Mara. You know how teenage boys are? You're adaptable. I was adaptable. That was always the compliment they gave me when they wanted me to accept something unfair. I put myself through 2 years of community college working weekends at a dry cleaner. Then I transferred. Then I graduated with a paralegal certificate and started at Harman and Reed at 23. I was good at the work. I made decent money. And because I was adaptable, because I was family, the requests started coming. $3,400 for Cody's lawyer when he got his first DUI. Just a loan, Mara. He'll pay you back. He didn't. $1,900 for the transmission on Gerald's truck. We're in a tough spot right now. They were always in a tough spot. The big one came 2 years ago. My mother called me on a Tuesday crying. They were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The house, Grandma Eloise's house, was 60 days from foreclosure. She needed $22,000. She said she would put it in writing. I want you to understand something about that moment. I knew, on some level, what I was doing. I knew it might not come back, but the house had been Grandma Eloise's. I had memories in that house that predated Gerald, predated Cody, predated everything that had come to replace what my family used to be. I wrote the check because of a kitchen table and the smell of her coffee in the morning. Not because anyone deserved it. They didn't put it in writing. When I brought it up 8 months later, my mother told me it had been a gift, not a loan. You offered, Mara. We didn't ask. She had asked. I had the voicemail. I saved those too. 6 days after the voicemail. The one that ended 29 years in 11 seconds. I got a call from a number I didn't have saved. I almost sent it to voicemail. I'm glad I didn't. It was a man named Mr. Calloway. He introduced himself as the executor of my grandmother Eloise's estate. I sat up straighter. He explained that Grandma Eloise had passed 8 weeks ago. I knew that. I'd been at the funeral. But that the formal estate process had taken time. There were assets beyond the Clearwater house that most of the family didn't know about. A separate investment account, a life insurance policy, a storage unit in Tampa that nobody had opened yet. Your grandmother left very specific instructions, Mr. Calloway said. She asked that the formal reading be conducted in person. She was particular about that. He gave me an address in Clearwater, 2 days from now, 10 in the morning. Will my mother be there? I asked. All named parties have been notified, he said. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat very still for a long moment. Grandma Eloise had seen things my mother refused to see. She'd visited me in my basement room once when I was 19 and sat on the edge of my twin bed and held my hand and said, "I know this isn't fair. I want you to know I know." She never said more than that. But she knew, and apparently she had done something about it. I drove to Clearwater on a Thursday morning. I wore a plain black dress and low heels, nothing impressive, and I pulled my hair back in a clip. I'd thought a lot about how I wanted to present myself in that room, and I had decided on invisible, unremarkable. The family had spent years perfecting the image of me as the quiet one, the difficult one, the one who couldn't quite manage. Fine. I'd give them that. One last time. The office was a small estate law firm on a quiet street. Dark wood paneling. A potted fern that had seen better days. The receptionist showed me to a conference room where my mother and Gerald were already seated, along with Cody and his girlfriend Becca, who I'd met exactly twice, and both times she'd looked through me like I was a window. My mother glanced up when I walked in. She looked me over once, that fast assessment she'd always done, checking for something to criticize. Then she looked away. "Glad you could make it," Gerald said. The tone was flat. We all knew why I was there. We all knew this was about money. I sat in the corner chair. I folded my hands in my lap. I looked at the table. Mr. Calloway entered and took his seat. He was a compact man in his 60s with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and a file folder thick enough to use as a doorstop. He didn't make small talk. He just opened the folder. He began with the Clearwater property, appraised at $1,340,000. Then the investment account, $218,000 in index funds that had been growing quietly for 20 years. Then the life insurance policy, a $150,000 payout. Then a savings account none of us had known about, $67,000. Total, just over $755,000. The air in the room changed the way it always changes when real money enters the conversation. I watched Cody stop scrolling his phone. I watched Becca touch Cody's arm. I watched my mother's hand find Gerald's knee. "The distribution of the estate, Mr. Trund," Calloway said, looking up over his glasses, "is as follows." He read the names. Gerald, the contents of the storage unit in Tampa. Cody, a specific savings bond worth $2,500, designated for educational purposes. My mother, the jewelry collection and personal effects, as itemized in Appendix C. Then, the remainder of the estate, including the Clearwater property, the investment account, the life insurance benefit, and the savings account, is bequeathed in full to her granddaughter, Mara. Nobody said anything for 4 seconds. I counted. Then Cody said, "That's a mistake." "It is not," Mr. Calloway said. My mother's voice came out very controlled. My mother was not in her right mind at the end. She had dementia. She didn't understand what she was signing. "Mrs. Holloway, your mother's cognitive evaluations from the past 18 months are part of the record. She was assessed as fully competent at the time of the most recent revision to this document." "When was it revised?" Gerald asked. 7 weeks before her passing. The room went quiet again, and I understood Grandma Eloise had known. She'd known about the voicemail, about the house, about all of it. She'd watched what my mother had done and she had acted. Quietly, without telling anyone, the way she'd always handled things. Gerald turned to look at me. "You knew about this," he said. A statement, not a question. "I did not," I said, which was true. "This is a setup. You got into her head, Gerald." My voice was calm. "I haven't spoken to my grandmother privately in 4 months. I was at her bedside when she passed, which is more than I can say for anyone else in this room." Becca made a sound. "Cody told me to watch my mouth." My mother stood up. She was doing the thing she did when she'd lost an argument, straightening her jacket, pressing her lips together, rebuilding the architecture of herself before she said anything else. "This is not over," she said. "We're contesting." Mr. Calloway removed his reading glasses and set them on the table. "Mrs. Holloway, I need to inform you of a provision your mother included specifically for that scenario." He turned to a tabbed section near the back of the folder. "Any party who contests this will on the grounds of incompetence or undue influence, and whose contest is subsequently denied, will forfeit any bequest they have already received under this document. That would include the personal effects and jewelry collection." My mother sat back down. "She thought of everything," Cody said. He was looking at me like he'd never quite seen me before. "She did," I said. "What happened in the next 20 minutes was not dramatic. That's the part nobody tells you. Real moments of reckoning aren't usually loud." My mother tried twice more to find an angle, the dementia argument, then a vague implication that I had been exerting financial influence over an elderly woman. Mr. Calloway responded to both calmly and thoroughly. Gerald stopped talking entirely and sat with his arms crossed, staring at the fern in the corner. Cody took Becca into the hallway. I could hear them talking in low voices through the door. I sat in my chair and looked at the table and let it happen. When it was over, Mr. Calloway walked me to my car. He was the kind of man who had spent decades watching families come apart over money and had developed a very specific kind of patience for it. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this privately." He paused. "She was very fond of you, Miss Delaney." I waited until I was in my car with the door closed to open it. Her handwriting, small and slanted, the way it had always been. "Mara, I know your mother. I've known her longer than you have. What she does with love is not love, it's inventory. She counts what she gives and she expects it back with interest. That's not your fault. It was never your fault." I should have said this out loud years ago instead of just thinking it. "The house is yours. Build something real. Gran." I sat in that parking lot for a long time. Here is what I didn't do. I didn't call my mother. I didn't send a message. I didn't explain or defend or ask for an apology or offer one. There was nothing left to negotiate. But I did make one call later that afternoon from a gas station off I-75. My stepfather had left a voicemail while I was driving. 3 minutes 40 seconds. The shape of it, they had consulted an attorney and were prepared to file a contest. And also, he would be contacting my firm's HR department to inform them that I had been using my paralegal access to manipulate estate documents for personal financial gain. I saved the voicemail. Then I called the senior partner at Harman & Reed, a woman named Miss Aguilar who had supervised my work for 4 years and had written 2 of my professional references. I told her exactly what had happened, the family dispute, the estate outcome, and the threat. I told her I wanted to document the threat proactively before any contact came through so that the record was clear. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Forward me the voicemail." I did. She called back in 20 minutes. "If he contacts HR, we'll handle it. You have nothing to worry about." A pause. "Well, Samara, are you doing okay?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that in days. "I'm working on it," I said. She said to take tomorrow if I needed it. I thanked her and meant it. The contest never materialized. My mother's attorney, a man Gerald's brother recommended, who specialized in personal injury and had no estate law experience, sent one letter that Mr. Calloway dispatched with a 2-page response outlining the competency record, the revision timeline, and the contest forfeiture clause. The letter referenced Appendix C. It referenced the cognitive evaluations. It referenced 4 separate instances of documented financial transfers from me to members of the family over the previous 7 years, which Grandma Eloise had apparently kept records of as well. Every check, every transfer, every voicemail where someone asked. I don't know how she had all of that. But she did. She had been paying attention for a long time. The Clearwater house was smaller than I remembered. 3 bedrooms, a covered lanai, a backyard with a Maya lemon tree that my grandmother had planted the year I was born. The first weekend I had the keys, I drove down alone and just walked through the rooms. The furniture was still there. Her reading glasses were still on the side table by the couch. The kitchen still smelled like her. I sat at the table for a long time without doing anything. In the back bedroom that had always been the guest room, I found a box on the closet shelf. Inside were photos, old ones, printed, the kind with the white borders and the date stamped in orange on the back. Me at 4, in the front yard of the house where I grew up. Me at 7, gap-toothed, holding up a fish I'd caught off a dock somewhere. Me at 12, sitting next to my grandmother at a kitchen table, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. In every single photo, I looked happy, uncomplicated, not yet adaptable. I took one photo out, the one at the kitchen table, and I set it on the counter, not because I needed the reminder, because that girl had existed and she deserved to be seen. The rest of the box I closed and put back, not out of bitterness, just out of the understanding that some things belong to the past, and the past belongs where you put it. My mother sent a text 4 weeks after the estate closed. Just 3 sentences. I hope you're proud of yourself. You've destroyed this family. I don't know who you are anymore. I read it once and set my phone face down on the counter. I thought about responding for exactly as long as it takes to make a cup of coffee. Then I didn't. There's a difference between people who can't love you and people who won't. My mother could love me. She made that choice many times over many years, and she made the other one instead. I used to spend a lot of energy trying to understand why, trying to find the angle where it made sense. I stopped doing that around the time I was sitting in a parking lot in Clearwater reading a letter from a woman who had been paying attention my whole life. You cannot renovate a house that someone else has decided to burn down. At some point you stop with the repairs and you build something new somewhere else. The Meyer lemon tree in the backyard made fruit that fall. Small, bright, improbably yellow. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee one morning in October and watched 2 of them drop onto the grass, and I thought about how my grandmother had planted that tree without knowing who would eventually be standing here watching it. She planted it anyway. That's the part I keep coming back to. She planted it anyway. If you're still trying to earn a place in a room where someone has already decided you don't belong, stop. You're not repairing a relationship. You're paying rent on a door that was never going to open. Change the address instead. I've thought a lot about what made Grandma Eloise different from everyone else in that family. It wasn't that she had more money, or more time, or even more information. She had the same view of my life that my mother had. She watched the same years go by. The difference was that she chose to pay attention honestly, without deciding in advance what she wanted to see. That's the part that stays with me. Not the estate, not the Clearwater house, not the look on Gerald's face when Mr. Calloway read the contest forfeiture clause. What stays with me is the idea that one person in a room full of people can simply decide to see clearly, and that decision, made quietly and without announcement, can change everything. My mother made her choices too. For years she chose the easier version of me, the one that explained her own decisions, the one that stayed small enough not to embarrass anyone, the one that handed over $22,000 and called it love. Every time I adapted, every time I moved to another corner of someone else's house and told myself it was temporary, I was making a choice also. I was choosing to believe that if I gave enough, eventually the accounting would balance, that someday the ledger would come back even. It doesn't work that way. I know that now, not because life is unfair, though sometimes it is, but because you cannot deposit generosity into an account that was never meant to hold it. Some people receive what you give them and convert it immediately into evidence of their own power over you. That's not a flaw in the system, that's the system. And the only way out is to stop making deposits. What I did in the days after that voicemail wasn't revenge. I want to be honest about that. Removing my card from the autopay wasn't punishment. It was accuracy. I was finally making my actions match the reality that already existed. They had already ended things. I was just updating the paperwork. The intelligence in what I did, if there was any, was in not acting from anger. I didn't call my mother screaming. I didn't send a long email at 2 a.m. cataloging every wrong. I sat down, thought clearly about what was real, and acted from that. That kind of clarity is hard to find when you're in the middle of something that hurts. But it's the only kind of action that holds up later. Everything else just becomes more noise in a situation that already has too much of it. And the resilience, the part I'm most proud of, honestly, wasn't surviving the estate dispute or outmaneuvering Gerald in a conference room. It was the years before any of that. It was sleeping in a basement at 19 and still finishing school. It was paying for someone else's DUI lawyer and still showing up to work the next morning with a clear head. It was carrying a ledger of invisible labor for a decade and not letting it make me bitter enough to stop functioning. That's the part that built everything else. Grandma Eloise didn't leave the estate to a victim. She left it to someone who had already proven, quietly and without an audience, that she could handle what came next. If you're in the middle of something like this, if you're the one who keeps showing up, keeps paying, keeps adapting, and keeps being told you're still not enough, I'm not going to tell you it will resolve itself cleanly. Sometimes it doesn't, but I will tell you that the way you carry yourself through it matters, not for them. They're not watching that carefully. For you. Because the person you become in the years nobody's paying attention is the person who will still be standing when the room finally goes quiet. Plant the tree anyway. You may not be the one who stands at the window watching it, but someone will.